Debt, a part of everyone's life. Whether we realize it or not, it surrounds us. From a student borrowing loan to study, a young professional swiping credit card, or a business taking loan to survive next quarter. From families to government, we are all living on borrowed money. It's not just number in the system, but a fuel of the modern life and the weight on our shoulders. But what if one morning you wake up with this news?
Breaking news: the world has decided to restart the economy and wipe out all global debts overnight.
$324 trillion, almost three times of world GDP, just vanished. No more EMIs, no more student loan, no more national debt on countries. So in this video, we will understand what would happen if all our debts are gone. Would the poor finally rise? Or would the system collapse overnight? Or this would be start of a new human era? This would also help us to understand how debts are not only curse for some, but the fuel of the modern life. Although today it sounds like a dream, but back in 2400 to 1800 BC, during the time of ancient Sumer and Babylon, debt wasn't something you carried forever. In fact, it was common for kings to declare complete debt cancellation every few years, popularly known as debt jubilee. The idea behind was simple. If too many citizens were falling under slavery and losing land due to debt, rulers would set the reset button as to bring harmony and stability in the economy. So what if we carried this practice today in this modern hyper-connected era? To understand how the whole debt system works, let's start from the basic. What is debt? It is basically when someone borrows a product or money with a promise to pay back later, usually with interest, is a debt. And to understand how the whole ecosystem works, you need to understand these three lines: the productivity, the long-term debt cycle, and the short-term debt cycle. An economy on the ground basically works on transaction between two people. One spends in exchange of goods and service, other receives income in exchange of their goods and service. And now, how does debt drives the economy? As income is the byproduct of productivity, in a normal economy, the more you produce, the more you earn and the more you can spend. But in a credit fuel economy, for example, if you earn 1 lakh and have a credit limit of 10%, now in total you can spend 1 lakh 10,000, and as one person spending is another person's income, the other person earning 1 lakh with a 10% credit limit again can spend 1 lakh 21,000. And repeating this cycle is how economy boosts itself on upward scale. Like in this graph, it shows how short-term debt cycle works. As due to credit, spending rises and so the other person's income. As a result, at some point, demand rises due to increase in income, but production remains lower. This causes inflation as demand is more than the production. Then here, central banks enter and increase interest rates. Now people will have less credit, reducing their income, and as debt repayment remains the same, people are forced to spend less, and one person spending less reduce the income of other, and so on the cycle shifts downward. As now the cycle becoming more downward, deflation starts to happen. As people are spending less, so the central bank would decrease the interest rates, so the income again increases. This cycle continues in short term as to create a balance between inflation and deflation by the central bank. Here inflation and deflation basically means when people tend to demand more than the supply of goods in the market, forcing prices to increase, resulting in inflation. And in deflation, people tend to demand less than the supply of goods in the market, forcing prices to fall, resulting deflation. If you notice that the top and bottom of each cycle finishes with more growth than the previous one, as it's human nature to spend more instead of clearing off the whole debt. In a long-term debt cycle, which usually happens completely in 75 to 100 years, after the peak happens, the debt burdens have become simply too big to be paid off, and the increase in debt repayment has exceeded the income growth, resulting something called deleveraging. When people have to cut their spending as debt has become bigger than income, less spending of one result in less income of other, credit disappear as people are now less credit worthy due to decreased income. They rush to sell their assets to clear off debt, but as too many people start to sell, the price of assets fall, resulting stock market to collapse, real estate to fall. As now asset prices fall, people become even lesser credit worthy and soon become fearful of debt. Lenders also fear to give more debt as people are now less credit worthy and the earlier debt has simply become too big to be paid off. In banking sector, as borrower default, the banks have even lesser money to pay back to depositor, squeezing the bank to default public money like FD, pensions, savings and more. The overall scenario results less spending resulting less income, causing decrease in wealth, resulting less creditworthiness than less borrowing. And this cycle continues by itself, and in long-term debt cycle, lowering interest rates doesn't work, as interest rates are already gone to zero and debt repayment has already become too big to be paid off, and the economy starts deleveraging, means falling of market even with zero interest. Similar was happened during the crisis of 2008. Real estate sector collapsed due to irresponsible allocation of debt to people who can't pay that back. Just defaulting debt bubble in one sector resulted into a massive economic crisis. Today the world has around $324 trillion in total debt, consisting around $222 trillion as private debt including households and $102 trillion as public debt. If we talk about wiping out this debt, means we are fast tracking the whole system to collapse, as majority of the money exists in the form of credit rather than real money, and the whole system would start deleveraging, causing devaluation of money, sectors to collapse, and massive unemployment. There are various ways in which even deleveraging can be smoothly handled out in the long-term debt cycle, but wiping out debt once won't solve the problem, as this cycle would again repeat itself in the long term until the credit exists. And I am not claiming credit or debt to be an evil created by rich to trap poor. Instead, it's in our hand how to use it. For example, if you take debt to buy a smartphone which doesn't increase your income in the future is a bad kind of debt. Rather, if you take a debt to start a business which has the possibility to increase your income and lifestyle in the future is a good kind of debt. So concluding all, what we can learn from this video? That debt isn't just evil, it drives the economy. And wiping out that debt means the fuel has been taken away, resulting into a complete collapse. Ultimately, it's you who decides whether your debt become a burden for life or a ladder to growth. Hope you find this valuable. Thank you.